What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition of Bucs Latest on the Fan Arch Network. I'm your host, Peter Blake, your Rolex reporter. What time is it? It's my time. And, of course, for Bucs Nation, it is your time. And we finally got some time here from Mike Evans' agent, Derek Gilmore, as he spoke to Mike Garafolo yesterday of the NFL Network. He had this to say about Evans and his return to the National Football League. Mike Evans started the season in great shape. Most people in the organization said probably he had the best training camp of everyone. He finished feeling better than he had in several seasons. I think his competitive nature leads to more football. That is my hope. Like most fans, I love watching him play. Now, Evans going into his 13th season, that is the question. Will it be with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or another NFL team? Last year, 30 catches, 368, 3 touchdowns. But the season cut short because of a broken collarbone. From the previous 11, he eclipsed 1,000 receiving yards, tying Jerry Rice. So the main question is, will Mike Evans not only return, but will he return to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And that's my question to you Bucs fans out there in Bucs Nation. How concerned are you about Evans returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Or do you see him moving on and going to another NFL team? Go ahead, put the comments there in the comment box for me. 1 to 10, what's your concern level? Of course, many people would say move on from Mike Evans because he already signed Chris Godwin to a big contract last year. But as we know, we talked about on previous shows, when this offense is humming, Evans is a part of it. You make Evans a part of that new Zach Robinson offense with Baker Mayfield. It certainly makes sense for him to come back. Now, the question is, can the Bucs, or will the Bucs, sign him to that big-time contract of $22 to $23 million that he could possibly get on the open market from teams, as we talked about previously, in the Houston Texans, the Kansas City Chiefs, a contending team. Right now, are the Bucs a contending team with their second half plunge? Doesn't necessarily feel like that. But, of course, the Bucs have an opportunity to make some big-time moves here in free agency in the draft, as I would expect this organization to make. I'd also say this. If Mike Evans wants the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Buccaneers want him, and they can come to some type of agreement where it's not a contract that's going to hinder you from doing future things when it comes to re-signing a Baker Mayfield, re-signing your own guys, and also being aggressive to go out there and get a pass rusher, then I think it's going to happen. And once again, Mike Evans will be in a Tampa Bay Buccaneer uniform. Fans, once again, what do you think? 1 to 10, how concerned are you with Mike Evans returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Now, this also would have to play into this because there were a lot of Bucs fans that thought Todd Bowles should be fired at the end of the season with the disappointing second half swoon as the Bucs finished out 8-9. Jay Glazer was one of them, the NFL insider for Fox Sports, who talked to WDAE Radio, 95.3, 620 AM right there with T-Kraz on Radio Row from San Francisco. And Glazer said this bluntly: it made no sense for the Bucs to keep Bowles and fire everyone else. When asked if the Glazers were interested, because there were big-time reports out there that the Glazers contacted John Harbaugh, they checked in with Sean McDermott, Glazer had this to add. He said that ownership loved Bowles and that to keep him aboard because they are such big fans of him rather than not wanting to pay his buyout. Now, we heard the buyout news from Rondé Barber about a month and a half ago. The reason why the Glazers would keep him is not only because they liked him, but because it was a money situation. They didn't want to go out there and pay for a big-name coach. But this doesn't necessarily seem to match up. The Glazers have done this before. They went out there and paid big time for a John Gruden. They went out there and paid for a Bruce Arians. So I don't necessarily buy that the Glazers are not willing to put the money out there. You look at Bowles' record overall during the regular season, 35-33, 1-3 in the postseason. Once again, a lot of Bucs Nation wants him fired because of what happened in the second half of the year. They will also say and point out that this team is mediocre and that they're going nowhere with Bowles as a head coach. They would also say because he is the defensive coordinator and the defense has struggled the last couple years, once again, being out of position and being one of the worst defenses in the league, that you would look to fire him. I'm not one of those people. I'm all about continuity. I think he can turn this thing around. I think he's a culture guy. That's the reason why the Glazers kept him in the first place. That's the reason why you signed him to an extension along with Jason Light, because of the culture and because of players like Levante David wanting to play for him. People will laugh. Of course they want to play for him because he provides no accountability. But I would say in the past, players have been able to play for him. That locker room has played for him. They've won 3 straight NFC South titles besides last year, and they were only a couple games away. Are there changes that need to be made offensively and defensively? Absolutely. And this comes from Jenna Lane, who had this to say, because you would think, with the changes that Todd Bowles fired everybody on the offensive staff and some on the defensive staff, that this was a ownership situation. But Jenna Lane says, the source said the Bowles made these moves on his own and not an ownership thing. So that is interesting to say the least in itself, because once again, you would think the Glazers would call the shots with Todd Bowles making those moves. So I guess my question to Bucs fans out there in Bucs Nation, did they make the right decision? Should Todd Bowles be fired? Put the comments in there in that box from 1 to 10. How disappointed are you that the Bucs held on to Todd Bowles? What I would say is the reason why they did hold on to him, they don't want to repeat previous mistakes, right? Tony Dungy can't get you there over the top, but this is way back in the late 90s. You can't get over the top versus the Philadelphia Eagles. John Gruden is hired. They give up 2 first-round, 2 second-round picks. You win the Super Bowl. And then after that, you didn't win a playoff game until Bruce Arians came in and won that playoff game and eventually won Super Bowl 55. So I don't think they want to repeat the same mistakes. If you become an organization that hires and fires coaches every 2 to 3 years, you become one of those worst organizations like the Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets. You don't want to be that. So I think the Bucs and I think the organization in general, the Glazers, did not want to repeat those same mistakes. You don't want to become that bad, terrible organization. Give them another year, see if they can turn this around. Hire a Zach Robinson, the former Liam Cohen pupil there. Have that offense going with Baker Mayfield with all the weapons you have. Improve that defense, get a couple of players, which we'll get to in just a moment, and then go from there. And you can turn this around, not only win the NFC South again, possibly go a little bit further. Because if you don't do that, then most likely Todd Bowles is out, Jason Light could be out, and you could be starting all over again with a new quarterback. As crazy as that sounds, and I think that's the scary part about this whole situation, where the Bucs become very desperate, and you have to make those certain moves in order to turn back into an NFC South contender and a Super Bowl contender. Let's move on to one of those players that you could see in a Tampa Bay Buccaneer uniform, and that would be Max Crosby. As it's been talked about in the offseason here through a lot of Bucs fans wanting to trade for him. You could see that happening. The 28-year-old defensive end / edge rusher is done with the Raiders. According to Jay Glazer of Fox Sports, at least 20 teams called about the availability of Crosby. Now that he is done with the Raiders, doesn't want to go through another rebuild, as they have the number 1 overall pick and are looking to draft Fernando Mendoza from the Indiana Hoosiers. He had 10 sacks last year. He's coming off a knee injury. The Bucs are definitely in the mix. You would think that they would be in the mix because they need an edge rusher. They need a guy that's going to be able to cause havoc, make those players on the defensive line that much better. Or Yaya Diaby, Avita Vea, guys like that. Elijah Roberts, a rookie like that. In 4 seasons, Crosby, double-digit sacks for those 4 seasons in the 7 seasons. So 4 seasons, double-digit sacks in 7 seasons. He's getting it done. 69.5 for his career. and this was said by Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, the insider there. One team that typically doesn't jump into these high-stakes waters, but would be perfect to try the Buccaneers. This is the type of move that will put Tampa Bay over the top. Of course, it makes sense with Crosby because not only do you get to go to a warm weather environment, possibly an upcoming team once again that can win the NFC South, be a Super Bowl contender if you get one player to solidify that situation on your defensive line, because you need an edge rusher. You haven't had that. Diaby leads the team with 7 sacks, but you got to get more. You got to get a game wrecker. You've got to get a player that can cause havoc, and that's exactly with Crosby. Furthermore, with that being said, John Spytek, who has connections with Jason Light. The question is, would the Tampa Bay Buccaneers give up the draft capital? Would they give up multiple first-round picks? If you're telling me you have to give up the 15th pick this year, I'm doing it because of the past of the Bucs not being able to get an edge rusher in the draft. And you don't have time to wait for a young player to come in right away and learn this Todd Bowles defense. You've got to get a guy that you know about. And even though Crosby is coming off a knee injury at this point, it's a minor knee injury. So would the Bucs trade multiple picks and also pay $30 million? I think at this point, you're in a desperate situation where you have to make this move. Once again, Crosby, 28 years old, looking for a new team. Glazer says Micah Parsons trade value. That would say, how much do you give up for him? You would have to give up at least multiple first-round picks, possibly a player, and also repay him or give him an extension, pay him over $30 million. So Bucs fans, could you see them making that big-time move with Max Crosby? Now, if that's not to your liking at this point, there is another player out there that's a free agent, and that would be a Trey Hendrickson. There is a possibility that he could be franchised. Once again, the Bucs are in that talk. He is 31 years old, has 81 sacks, but he's coming off an injury-riddled year where he only had 4 sacks. So he's a free agent. You're going to have to pay him also $30 to $35 million. And there is talk out there that the Cincinnati Bengals could franchise him. Now, I don't see that happening. If Hendrickson hits free agency and you strike out on a Max Crosby, are you going after Trey Hendrickson, the edge rusher from the Cincinnati Bengals? Who do you want, Bucs Nation, Bucs fans? Is it Max Crosby? Is it Trey Hendrickson? Could you see this team making that big-time move where you trade draft capital, as Jason Light hasn't done that in the past? Could you trade a player? Or do you settle with free agency, take a chance, but not really with Hendrickson? Even though he's coming off an injury, he's older, still has 81 sacks. That's what you need. You need a game wrecker. Which one would you prefer, Bucs Nation, Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson? And the last player that was talked about in free agency that the Bucs could definitely look at would be Devin Lloyd, the linebacker. According to Pro Football Focus, Devin Lloyd is looking to cash in. The Jaguars opted against picking up, and this again is according to Pro Football Focus, picking up Lloyd's 5th-year option last offseason, to which he responded by producing his best season yet, earning season or second-team All-Pro honors. The 27-year-old posted the second highest Pro Football Focus overall grade, 89.1 among qualifying linebackers during the regular season. Now, again, PFF says the best landing spot would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as the 27-year-old posted the second highest Pro Football Focus grade, as we talked about, among qualifying linebackers during the regular season, finishing as the only linebacker with an 80.0 plus Pro Football Focus grade in run defense, 83.2 coverage, 81.1, and pass rushing, 82.2. So not only run defense, but coverage, as this has been the Achilles heel when it comes to the middle of a Todd Bowles defense, as it has been the Atlantic Ocean, where it is wide open for opposing offenses. Of course, the Bucs struggled mightily at the linebacking position. There's still question if Levante David is going to come back, and even if he does come back, you still have a need because Savasi Dennis ranked 90th out of 94 for qualifying linebackers and Pro Football Focus with a coverage grade of 30.5. It's not going to get it done. This is where you have to spend that money. This is where a lot of people look at the cap, as we talked about on last show, $14.5 million. That could definitely go up with restructures, and this could be a player that would definitely fit a Todd Bowles defense. So what do you think, Bucs fans? Devin Lloyd in a Tampa Bay Buccaneer uniform. Is this the move to make, not only with the Max Crosby and the Trey Hendrickson? Like and subscribe to Bucs Latest here on Fan Arch Network. We'll see you next time here. I'm your host, Peter Blake, your Rolex reporter. What time is it? It's my time. And for Bucs fans and Bucs Nation, it's your time. We'll see you next time on Bucs Latest on the Fan Arch Network. As we always say, go Bucs.